Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about how could affect travelers in 2025. Summer is approaching and many of you will be taking vacations. One thing that we know is when tariffs are put in place, they will have an effect on you. What will those effects be? But let's jump right into it. What will happen to travelers when tariffs are imposed? One thing that we know is when tariffs are put in place, they will have an effect on you. What will those effects be? So there are many different effects that tariffs will have on travelers. Number one is higher prices. And when we talk about higher prices, we're talking about goods and services at your destination. The US is a very large consumer of goods from other countries. When the price of imports increases because of tariffs, it often gets passed on to the consumer, which means that you're going to pay more for things at your destination. So if you plan on traveling to France or Italy, buying leather goods, you'll likely have to pay more money for them, even if you buy them online and ship them home. The same is true with watches, clothing items, just about anything that you would purchase while you're traveling. Now, don't get me wrong, you still should do it, you still should enjoy yourself, but just keep in mind, the prices will likely be a little bit higher and you need to budget accordingly. Now, airfare is another big part of this. If you live in the United States and you want to travel to Europe, airfare can get pretty expensive. Now, some of the major airlines that fly across the Atlantic Ocean, they don't necessarily get their planes directly from the manufacturer. They purchase them through leasing companies. Many times those leasing companies are based outside of the United States. So if a tariff is placed on these aircraft, the leasing companies will likely pass that cost on to the airline, which then will trickle down to you, the customer, meaning that your airfare will increase. Another thing that could happen is, like we mentioned before, it depends on how much the stock market fluctuates between now and then. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe it all goes away. Or maybe there is such a big change in the stock market that you see massive drops in value, and so your money might not stretch as far as you think it will today. So you need to take that into consideration. Also, don't forget about foreign exchange rates. When tariffs are imposed, foreign exchange rates could fluctuate. And if you're traveling to another country, maybe you're heading to Greece, you need to exchange your dollars for euros. That exchange rate could change, and depending on what direction it goes, either positively or negatively for you, will depend on how much money you have left over after your trip. Retaliation from trade partners. Every time that the United States has put tariffs in place on another country's goods, that country has retaliated with tariffs of their own. When you impose tariffs on another country, they retaliate by putting tariffs on your goods. And usually it's not a one-to-one. Whatever you put on them, they won't put on you. It's usually more than that. So if the US puts a 20% tariff on Chinese goods, China doesn't come back and say, okay, we're going to put a 20% tariff on American goods. Usually it is more along the lines of, we are going to put a 30% tariff on American goods. So it's always worse when you impose tariffs on another country. Now let's look at what happens when the US imposes tariffs on the European Union. In 2019, the US put tariffs on European Union steel and aluminum. The European Union retaliated with tariffs on American motorcycles, jeans, whiskey, just to name a few. Now, here's the thing. When they retaliate and put tariffs on your goods, that means that those goods are going to be more expensive at your destination. So if you are headed to the UK and you want to buy a pair of Levi's jeans, they're going to cost you more money. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you're traveling to another country and they're imposing tariffs on American goods, the prices are going to be higher. Let's talk about foreign perception of the USA. There is a great article on CNBC that talks about the negative effects that tariffs could have on the US economy, its workers, and even its image around the world. One of the points made in the article was that when tariffs are imposed, other countries don't view the United States as favorably as they did before. A strong economy with a positive outlook is viewed as more trustworthy than a country that is imposing tariffs and protectionist policies. And this can cause problems for travelers. When people don't view the US favorably, there could be more restrictions placed on Americans traveling to their country. For example, more visa requirements or even more stringent screening at airports and border crossings. And this brings us to the next point, which is, will more people move abroad? Protectionist policies and high tariffs are often signs of a struggling economy. And if that's the case with the US, people may choose to live and work in other countries where the economy is stronger. Less people living and working in the United States could lead to a decrease in demand for travel and tourism. And since tourism is a big part of many economies around the world, less tourists visiting a destination means less money for that country. The point is that imposing tariffs and implementing protectionist policies isn't good for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel.